This is interesting. I've I've done a lot of presentations in my day, and I used to work remotely, having 5 teams in 5 different states. But speaking to everybody on mute is kind of interesting. Um, so bear with me. We're gonna get through a lot of material here, and I'm going to tell you in advance that this is a very busy deck. Um, I don't want you to be concerned with that. I don't want you to be critical of it. What I've done is I've created a deck that you can carry with you. And when you're working on church records somewhere, you're going to say, boy, I wish I had that one link to that one site and I could use that right now. There are well over 100 hyperlinks that will take you directly from the PDF or the PowerPoint version of this presentation straight to internet sites. And you'll see as we go through that I will bring a few of them up. And you'll see that it will become what some people call a primer, some people call a primer. It will become a reference document that you'll carry with you, hopefully, and be able to use those links going forward. Okay, so that's why it's as busy as it is. Normally, I don't. I follow the good rules of leaving a lot of white space, but not in this case. I put this together a few years ago on request. Folks were giving up on church records, and I thought that was a terrible thing, right? I've done it myself, and so I'm hoping to convince you today that if Word can do it, you can do it. All right, so we're going to talk about all the issues with exploring church records and why you would want to. Here's a quick agenda. We're going to talk about, I hope you can see that cursor that I'm throwing around, but we're going to talk about some myths, things that I'd like you to forget about going through this deck. We're going to review very quickly what you can hope to discover in church records. There's a ton of challenges that, somewhere along the line, people give up, people drop off the road and just go do something else with genealogy. I want to convince you to give this a try. It's worth the effort. Suggested search strategies. A lot of people, even when you find the church records and they become available and they're laid right in front of you, folks don't know what to do next. And so we're going to talk about that. And then I'm providing sort of as an appendix, hundreds of links to reading material, to reference, and it all depends upon country and denomination, etc. Okay? Let's talk about the myths. We're going to debunk and demystify. Those are my favorite sayings in all of my presentations. If you've been in any of my presentations before, I think demystifying something is wonderful. It just means you just go, oh, I can do that, right? So, myth number 1, the records are gone. My family's church no longer exists, and so I won't be able to do any church research. And I will tell you that even if your church is closed, or they moved to another location, or it burned to the ground 100 years ago, or somehow has gone out of existence, the records probably still exist. And I'm going to show you how to confirm that and how to find them. Myth number 2 that I hear all the time: civil records are good enough. Well, let me tell you, and this is where I miss being face to face, because I would love to hear your thoughts on this, but tonight I can't. So folks come to me and they say, gee, I have the civil records for my family, the birth, the marriage, the death certificates. Now that's great, but the civil records, most of you likely know, they only go back 75, 100 years. The New York State, the vital records aren't really reliable until about 1910. So churches go much farther back than that. They predate the requirements for civil record keeping, sometimes by hundreds of years. Church records, such as burials, often contain biographical information. The church record is almost like an obituary. They're more likely to identify parents, maiden names, and relationships than any civil record. About the only thing you get out of a civil record for relationships is someone who reports a death. There's much more in church records. Church membership records. Some denominations, some churches have these wonderful membership records where they list the entire family. We're going to talk about that. And sometimes while you're scanning for your own records, you're going to see cousins go by. You're going to say, hey, that's a familiar name. Hey, that's my uncle. Hey, that's my cousin. So lots of reasons, lots of things to discover, and beyond the collection of the civil records. Plus, the church records are a lot less expensive. What's in New York State now is what, $22 for one document? Myth number 3, our needs. One needs to know which church they attended. I used to give up at this point. Like, I don't know what church they went to. Well, I'm gonna show you that. You know, a lot of folks give up and they stick with the census and civil birth and newspapers and cemetery and surrogate court, and that's all great. But you don't need to give up because you don't know what church they went to. We're going to talk about that. Myth number 4. One needs to speak the native language. How many folks in Buffalo have German or Polish ancestors, right? Folks in Niagara Falls, it was half German. I'm going to show you that you really don't need to speak the language to do the research and to use the records in other languages, okay? With a little guidance and homework, which I'm going to show you how to do, we can get past that brick wall. All right, so no questions right now, but remember your questions if you had any, and let's move on. What can you hope to find in church records? Well, I don't think you'd be here if you didn't have some sense of what you can find. But let me tell you that the churches, especially long ago, were the collectors and they were the scribes for the local community. You know, prior to the advent of government required registration of vital statistics, churches were the main entity for recording events. And they continue to this day. I mean, when you get married in a Catholic church today in Buffalo, Erie County, New York, at the end of that service, the church forwards the marriage information to the civil authorities in Erie County. So, and also to New York State. So the churches collected them and recorded them before the civil authorities, and they continue to do so today. Churches, if you've never seen the church records before, I'll tell you that there are separate registers, right? There's ledgers, registers. They're recorded often in chronological order. Some of them are for birth, some of them are for marriage, some of them are for death or burial or christening, and we'll go over in a little more detail what you can find in those. But remember, normally you're looking at digitized or microfilmed or microfiched versions of very old registers. What are you going to find? You're going to find baptisms of infants born to church members. You're going to find christenings of adults. Now that depends upon the church, the denomination, and their specific practices. Marriages, deaths, burials where the church official presided over a burial somewhere across town, but still recorded it in the decedent's church record. And if you get lucky, the church that you're researching for a particular family is going to have these member registers that are just full of wonderful information. Where do you find it? I mean, this is what we look for, right? Genealogists look for birth, marriage, death, parents, relationships, right? Burial places, prior marriages, places of birth. These things, I'm not going to review this in any great detail, but this is something to print and keep with you forever. How do you find the date of death? Well, you go to the church. You find the death record, the burial record, or the member register. If you're looking for a prior marriage, you can often find it recorded within the details of a marriage record, more often than on the civil record. And again, the marriage record. So keep this table in mind as we're going through for the rest of the presentation. This is certainly worth the effort. Okay, you're going to say, "Oh gosh, I can't read that." Remember that this is the light at the end of the tunnel. This is the reward. That all of this information that we hold so dear and that we aspire to collect and record, this is the richest source of anything I can think of. from my point of view, it gives you one more, on top of everything I just showed you, it gives you one more thing, which is the why. We figured out who lived where and when and what they did and for who they did it for and how many years they lived and how much they owned. But the why is so much more interesting, isn't it? When I first discovered my Bray family and discovered that they had come here from England after building the first railroads, and then being involved in the iron and steel industry, the creation of the iron and steel industry in America, and building the first railroad line to Wheeling, West Virginia. When I connected with history and found out that they came here because the work ran out in England, they were done, and they came here to build more railroads. The why was just a fantastic learn on my part. So, why did they emigrate? Why did they live where they did? Why did they make the decisions they did? Church records arguably will give you that why more than any other source document. So I'm glad we all have the mute, because after dinner here, I got a lot of full stomachs here. This is exciting stuff. Okay. Overcoming challenges. There are a lot of challenges here. There are stairs to climb. Things like, which religion were your great grandparents? What church did they go to? Are the records out there, and where are they today? Things like handwriting and Latin. We're going to talk about all of it. Before we do, I want to propose to you that there are 5 steps in a cyclical process of using church records. It begins with, what denomination, which church did they go to? Where are those records today? Can I even read them? I have to cope with the language and the handwriting. And then once I find all these records, what's the best way to employ them, to search them? Is there a search order that's appropriate? We're going to talk about those 5 things. Those are the 5 steps. First step, what denomination? This is a whole shopping list of where you might find what denomination a particular couple or family practiced. Newspaper articles, and I think that this is where I start talking about hyperlinks here, but you can see that I have Fulton history, and I'm sure there would be a lot of nodding heads in the room if we were together saying, yeah, I've tried Fulton. You got to be pretty good at Boolean logic, but if you get up onto Fulton history, you may be able to find information about an obituary or something about your family. It's usually a tragedy, but there are more and more newspapers being digitized and searchable with Boolean logic more than ever before each day. So there's also another one called newspapers.com, which is a subscription service, but I believe it comes free with Ancestry, so maybe a lot of you have it. Just as an example here, I'm going to click on this hyperlink in the presentation to show you that this will take you straight to Fulton history. It takes a minute for the browser to start up. And gosh, the silence is deafening, isn't it? Come on. Oh my goodness, it's slow today. I'm going to go to the search. Kind of curious to hear whether that actually showed up.
Hi, Ward, it's Jeanette. I wonder if it's behind your presentation.
Yeah, I think so. We're going to let that go for now. Anyway.
That's good.
I have a feeling everybody's heard of FultonHistory.com. If not, try it out. What you'll find is the first choice on the menu is you go in and you put quotes around your ancestor's name and you're on your way. If you'd like to talk about that or get a 10-minute lesson in Boolean logic that'll help you with newspaper searches, I invite you to call me or email me and just set up a phone conversation, and I'd be glad to walk you through it. A handful of examples, and you'll be an expert. Okay, so step number 1, we're trying to find out the religious denomination. Newspaper articles and obituaries that say the funeral will be held from the family's home, and then we're going to go to the church and then to the cemetery. It's going to tell you likely their religious denomination, maybe even the church. Records such as marriage, birth, christening, of course, tell you what denomination they are. Burial records. Often you'll find burial before you'll find anything else, especially with websites such as Find a Grave and Billion Graves, I think it's called. But sometimes burial is the first that you'll find, and of course it'll often have a headstone with a designation of denomination, or it'll be a church burial ground, and so it's very obvious what denomination it is. Or the records may indicate that the person's Catholic or Lutheran. You may need to talk to the office. So burial records are very helpful. Now let's try it one more time. If you know the country of origin for an immigrant, but you're not sure of their denomination, were they Catholic, were they Protestant, you can kind of take an educated guess by using this website. I'm going to quickly jump to it. Jeanette, if you could tell me that this actually shows up.
Okay, I'm watching.
Can you see the browser trying to open here?
No.
You see it now?
Nope.
All right, let's try this. Sorry about that, folks. What do you see now?
Now I see my own self.
Oh boy. Okay. Oh, I see what I need to do. Thank you. I have to get better at this. You see now something that says National Master at the top?
I sure do.
Okay, then I finally figured out what I'm doing wrong. And I can't close this. There we go. This is very busy with ads, so we're going to get out of it pretty quick. But it's a list of like 150 countries. So if your family's from Albania, what it's trying to tell you here, now what's going on? Oh, somehow I hit the ad. If your family's from Albania, it says they're 70% Muslim. So that tells you something, right? And Austria, they're 73% Roman Catholic. Hints like this probability and statistics here aside, hints like this will help you to figure out which local church they might have attended and which denomination they were. Now I'm back to you. All right, that's not as smooth as I would hope it was, but we won't use as many links in the presentation. So let me get back to where we were. I apologize.
No problem.
Making you all dizzy. It's my fault. Okay, we're going to get back into this discussion. What denomination, which church, where are the records? This cycle is very important. We were talking about for immigrants, there's a link here which takes you to a site which tells you 80% of the population from Albania was so-and-so. So very useful. And if you're not certain, I'm going to show you ways that you can take an educated guess, and this is part of an educated guess. Of course, that pile of funeral cards and family Bibles that Grandma had in her Chesterfield, well, don't you wish you had those now? All right, so I'm hoping that you can answer the step one. What is the denomination? Step two, which church did they attend? Now, very important, keep in mind that Christian couples are usually married in and attended the bride's church, the church where she was likely baptized in. It's not always that way, but it usually is in the 19th century and back, often in the 20th century. Sometimes the same source that you use to figure out the denomination, such as Catholic, will also tell you what church they attended. when you're still not certain of the church that they attended, there's a number of resources you can employ. City and town atlases and maps often show where your ancestors lived. And it also listed every church by denomination, often in the city directory. For instance, this graphic here shows the Buffalo City directory, shows churches. Here's Baptist churches and their addresses and the staff. County and local history books, same way. Oftentimes they'll talk about early church history in a particular town or county. Now, the Amherst Family History Center, and I know other family history centers that have the same thing, have developed these ward maps for Buffalo. Now, I know I'm just talking about Buffalo, but this concept was replicated in many different family history centers. They have a ward map which helps you find census 30 years ago. It's not as useful anymore. But in the corner, they have an inventory of all the churches in that ward on that map, and they have little red dots on the map. So if you have an address from the city directory for your ancestor, or you know what street or road they lived on, you can often figure out which Catholic church they belong to by checking out the ward maps. So another resource for you to figure out which church that they belong to. Now this is for Buffalo, but I'm sure that similar resources exist for many, many different places in America and Europe. Now, this is where I'm gonna do my homework next time. But anyway, there's some wonderful lists that have been made available for Buffalo, for instance. These sorts of resources exist for many different localities. I'm doing research right now in Wyoming County for Manhattan Circuit Court. And I find that they have their own church lists published. They have their own county lists and towns. And they have maps which will help you as well. This one on the bottom, the 1901, was done by Cynthia Van Ness. You all probably know Cynthia over at the Historical Society. She's done this wonderful job online. I'm not going to bring it up just to save time, but I make a note on this page, go to all these links. The first one is simply a document which lists churches that were established between 1832 and 1860. Fantastic resource to find out which Catholic churches existed. Then you've got a church list by county and town that's also published and available. And then this map where you can put your ancestors' address in, they're on Genesee Street, and then you can zoom in and see where all the Catholic churches were. I mean, it's a phenomenal resource. I would show it to you here, but then we'd have to go back through that dance. So I'm not going to do it. But make a note. So, and I always like to quote Willie Keeler and say, when you can't hit them where they are, hit them where they ain't, right? Willie Keeler had a fantastic batting average, and when people asked about his secret, he just said, I don't hit the ball where it's pitched, I hit it where it ain't. Keep looking. You will find that families often attended churches from a different denomination if they were across the street, or just keep looking. Almost, in the 19th century in America, for instance, 95% of the population attended some church, synagogue. So don't give up, keep looking. So we're at step 2. We figured the denomination. Hopefully we've identified the exact church, right? We think they went to St. Joe's downtown. So now what? Where are the records? Do the records exist? I promised you it was a myth that records are lost and you won't find them. My experience, and I use a lot of church records in my work for my clients, and I've had hundreds and thousands of clients, is that 75 to 80% of the time, the church record can be found. Sometimes it's pretty difficult to get your hands on them, but 75 to 80% of church records in the last 400 years still exist in one form or another. I'm going to tell you where to look. Gosh, I wish I could see your hands up in the air yelling at me. So, where are the records? The bad news is there is no one repository which contains all church records. You know, you'd think, well, maybe the Mormons, they have them all by now. No, they don't. They have a nice collection. They have the best collection on earth, is my understanding, for records, but they don't have them all. There's also no single list which represents all available and existing church records. It varies a lot by locality. I'm going to give you some examples in here that have to do with Western New York, but I'm just using them as examples. This applies to the world. So, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and their Family History Center, which I know a little bit about, you can access their catalog on FamilySearch.org. And I'm not going to get into any detail here. I assume that you all have been at FamilySearch.org before, and if you haven't, call me and I'll give you a half-an-hour tour. It is not a particularly intuitive site, but there are more records more digitized records available online there than anywhere, and that includes Ancestry. So call me, let's talk. If you haven't used it, you're not familiar. Now, Family Search site doesn't have a place where you say, go search church records. What you do is you search your ancestor. If you look to the right here, you'll search the catalog for a particular place, like Cheektowaga, New York. And then this will come up and say Cheektowaga cemeteries, Cheektowaga church records. And you click there, and down will come a list of 25 churches that they have records for in Cheektowaga. From there, it's a matter of navigating the site and navigating the digital content. And right now, the Mormons have between 80 and 90% of their records digitized and available online instantly for free. So this is my first recommendation for a place to look for the church record, the church that you identified that your family attended. Okay, FamilySearch.org. Family history centers, I've been to dozens of them across the country, and they maintain inventories of records that they have on permanent loan. You know, the one in Amherst, New York here has permanent loan for Erie and Niagara County. Anything that was ordered and came to the facility never went back to Salt Lake City. It's kept on permanent loan and it's in the drawers. Well, it's just fantastic. If you're looking for the Church of the Good Shepherd, okay, the Episcopal Church in Buffalo, New York, well, it's on film and it's in the drawer. Have fun. You're rocking and rolling. You have found where are the records. So, although I point you to the online website, Family Search, I'm also pointing you to the Family History Center to use the film and the fiche when it's available. You also get the benefit of the librarians there who can help you navigate the films. Third place for Western New York is the Buffalo and Erie County Public Library. And they have, you can see the two links here. They have the church records and the church records by town. One's alphabetical by town. And they have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of microfilm and fiche and hard copy printed records between the Grosvenor Research Room and the Western New York Genealogical Society collection. The lines kind of blur in the room. If you've been to the Grosvenor Room, you know that the Western New York Genealogical Society has a few stacks, and then there's a huge area, which is the Grosvenor Room collection, which has been assembled over the last 100 years. The Grosvenor is like the 7th largest repository for genealogy research in the country. There's a lot there. And why is that showing up? So 2 publications here where you can look before you go and decide whether the records that you're looking for are actually there. All right. So what have we talked about so far? We have talked about online and family search. We've talked about going to the Family History Center to see what they have. Erie County Public Library in the Grosvenor Room. Next, I want to point out for Western New York. Now, before I move on, I mean, I'm giving you the Erie County Public Library here, right? And I'm very Buffalo centric here, and I realize this is a Niagara County group, but I'm sure that your Niagara County libraries have genealogical collections as well, and so does the Niagara County Genealogical Society. So these are just examples where you're looking at the library level, you're looking at the Family History Center level, you're looking at professional organizations and clerks, and here I'm talking about a history museum. So although this is Buffalo, translate and substitute Niagara County. Now I'll take this opportunity, since I stopped anyway, to tell you that I'm distributing, along with this deck, hundreds of links for Niagara County in a separate document. Okay, it's organized by town in Niagara County and shows you all the church records that exist. It's a one-of-a-kind collection of links that I've built and maintained over the years. Okay, stolen from all the best. So, all right. So, gosh, I wish I could open some of these links. So, the Buffalo History Museum member research room, that you have to be a member to use without paying, also has their list of church records, and they have a wonderful collection of church records, several boxes full of film. Okay, the one that you're looking for might just be in there. So check the list, or just pay them a visit and say hello to Cynthia for me, and tell her I sent you. Everybody knows about Ancestry that's on this call. Ancestry is one of the largest subscription-based genealogy sites on earth. It also tends to be clouded with a lot of less than professional efforts. Be careful. But as you search for your ancestors in all of these sites, Ancestry, MyHeritage, Find a Grave, Family Genie, right? Remember that a lot of what they've scanned and collected and made available are church records, and they're often categorized. For Ancestry, once you've done a search for your ancestor, there's a link down the left side which says births, marriages, and deaths. And if you drill down farther, you will see maybe just deaths, and you'll see the Social Security index, and you'll see church records. And so Ancestry has some of the church records that you may seek, but you can't go and look for the church itself. They don't have a catalog as such. It's better to search for your ancestor and see if there's anything under the birth, marriage, and death category that happens to be a church record. They're there. It's just a different way of getting at it. And you can go old school. I did this the other day. Called some folks in Wyoming County. It's a local Catholic church who has been there 100 years. The church records I was looking for were from the church that preceded that church. Turns out that I found an obscure reference that said that they still had their records in their rectory. So I called, and sure enough, they were very willing to make some copies for me, do some searches and make some copies for me out of their baptisms, marriages, and burials. And I'm going to send them a nice donation, or a box of donuts, or maybe both. If you're close enough, walk in, bring a box of donuts and a smile, right? And be polite and respectful. And I've found universally that, standing where your ancestors stood is very cool once you figured out where it was they attended. And working with the staff, they may be busy, but I've always found that they're most willing to help and support folks who have local community ancestors. So old school is what I call it. Pay them a visit, bring them some donuts. Now, we've been talking a lot about Buffalo. I apologize for that. I had planned to flip over to a couple of the other documents and websites for Niagara County. Because of my technical difficulties, we're not going to do that. But I will tell you that I'm providing you with plenty of links to do so. Substitute Niagara Falls for Buffalo or whatever. All right. It depends where you're doing your research, right? You could be doing research in Germany or Ireland, or you could be doing it in Greece. This page gives you a link to Family Search where they explain how to use German church records. Very detailed, very, very comprehensive instructions on how to find the records and how to find the town. And so German records, Ireland, Catholic Church records, Greece, if you take this final link here, it will bring you to a main familysearch.org wiki main page. Wikipedia is a content management, it's a knowledge management engine that the LDS Church has employed to store all of their knowledge. And so if you go to this familysearch.org wiki.en.main page, that site, you just go in and say, I want to know about Yugoslavian church records, and it'll come up with a PDF file which helps you understand all the details and intricacies of that research. So we can't hope to cover every denomination, every city, every country in an hour-long presentation, but I will tell you that everything you need to know, everything you want to know, start at this page. Start at this main page here or one of these links. I mean, German and Catholic are very prominent here in this area. Okay, so this is a wonderful resource that the Mormons have placed out there for public consumption that explains all of their body of knowledge about church records from particular places. So we found out what denomination they were, and we found out which church they attended, and we found the records, right? Where are the records? Well, we found them at the library, or we found them in the Mormon website, or we found them at the church itself. Well, now what? Well, there's a few things that you're going to cope with. First and foremost, in my mind, because I barely speak English, is foreign languages. And I gave up for a long time on my German ancestors. And someday when we meet them again, I will have to apologize. But I gave up on that research for a long time because German, written in old German script, was just a bit too much for me. And I will tell you now that it doesn't need to be. I'm going to give you some tools to get past this brick wall. There's really, you don't need to speak the language to use the records. The birth records are all in columnar format usually. What you need to do is understand a small lexicon of terms. And these are the ones that I recommend you get to know. Whatever language you're dealing with, find out what is the term for given name, surname, baptism, father, mother, etc. Write them down. Build your lexicon, okay, so that you're ready when you get into these records to say, Geburten, I understand, I know what that is. You don't need to speak German to read birth records in Germany. There's a couple of ways that you can build your lexicon, right? This is the list of words that you need to know in other languages. There are hundreds of language aid books, French to English, Latin to English, English to Spanish, Spanish to French. These books do exist. Each library that I've ever been in has a nice collection of these. I've also discovered something wonderful in Google. Google.com, if you go into the search page for Google.com and say simply English to Latin, like I pointed out here. Oops, which I know, there we go. English to Latin, it'll bring up two boxes. The left will be something you write in English, and on the right-hand side, it'll instantly translate what you're writing from English to Latin. or vice versa, Latin to English. I have not found a language that it does not support. Although I have not tried Mandarin because I don't understand the script. But most European languages, let's say, are supported. So you can use the books on the shelf at the library or in the Family History Center, or you can use the Google translators. They're very powerful and they're pretty accurate. So you're making your translation list. Here's an example. I took my list and I wrote down the English and then the German and then the Latin. It's relatively straightforward to do this and then keep it with all of your permanent records, right? You're going to use it over and over again. So you figure, hey, I got this made, right? I've figured out those German words and I found the records and I figured out what denomination. You know, I'm all set. No, you're not. The next challenge is alphabets, and I happen to be Welsh, and I'm sure that others of you on the call are Welsh, maybe Welsh speaking. The Welsh have their own alphabet. And this is where I normally play a young Welsh man singing the Welsh alphabet in grade school. We're not going to be able to do that today because the videos seem to be a challenge. But this is where I felt like crying one day. I remember in the Family History Center, I was so delighted to find out I was Welsh. And then to hear the words, I mean, it sounds like Star Trek Klingon, you know, to listen to them talk and then to find out that their alphabet was different was like overwhelming. But it didn't have to be. There are wonderful sites out there. One from a friend of mine, Mr. Ball, over in Wales, who's published some Welsh phrases on gravestones, so that if you see a Welsh gravestone, it's going to tell his life story, and it's all in Welsh. And John Ball helps you through it here. Welsh language tools for genealogists. There are some Family History Center librarians who speak Welsh. One example of a different alphabet. You're going to run into this. Okay, don't let it stop you. At the end of this presentation, I give you a long list of alphabet and language and reading assistance links to the internet. Because there's a lot of German, I'll spend a minute on this. There's this wonderful publication by Edna Bentz, I believe her name was. And she has a book called Deciphering Germanic Records that says, if I can, you can. And she gets into these, this wonderful, English, here's an English word, family name, and then here it is in German, and then here it is in the old German script. And you sit and you just you stare at it like you don't know how to read anymore. But this book, which is probably about 30 pages, is all you'll need to decipher and to start reading old German script records off of film. Trust me, you will, in 15 minutes, you'll be reading it. And it's extraordinary how good that feels when you get past that barrier. Don't let it stop you. All right, so here we are. Denominations figured out. We know what church. We found the records. And now we notice that for that church, there's like hundreds of pages of scribbles. How do you attack this huge pile, maybe several different books or several different microfilms of records? Let's talk about how you approach that. Before I begin telling you how to approach the church records, I want to get a couple of things on the table. There's an overreaching premise that everybody should know by now, and that is that you proceed from the known to the unknown. You don't jump. I spent a year one time researching my great-grandfather Octavius Bray in Indiana. And I mean, how many Octavius C. Brays could there be in the Midwest, right? Well, after a year of research, I found out that there were two, and I did the wrong one. You can't jump. You got to go from the known to the unknown, from parents to their parents to their parents, and it's really tempting to jump around, but you really need to stay on the path, or you're going to be chasing the wrong John Smith or the Octavius Bray. Okay, just I know I'm lecturing, and I know you'd be rolling your eyes at me right now. I can see it through the screen, but it's worth a reminder. I want to remind you that the ledgers and journals often have indexes. Now, as they're recording these books over time, these marriages year after year after year in chronological order, in the front of the book, or maybe in the back of the book, they were keeping an index, alphabetical, or at least semi-alphabetical, maybe under A, B, C, D, E, so that you could find the page that your great-grandfather's marriage is on. More than once, I have started reviewing a film serially, reading it, trying to find a date or a name, scanning until my eyes went blurry, only to find out that there's an index that I could have used and been done in 10 minutes. So just don't miss that, right? Why scan hundreds of pages? Look for the index pages. All right, something to consider with church records. I know we're getting real excited now because you're thinking, I can do this. We can get this far. Once you've discovered the church that a particular person attended, you might think that you've got it made. Other family members will also be in those records, but not necessarily. Parents and children are often found at separate churches over time. There's several reasons. Families moved, right? And they attended a new church. Or the parents stayed in the hometown and the kids moved, and now they're attending a different church. Custom, very important. In a Christian home, in a Christian marriage, they attended the bride's church. They got married in the bride's church. They attended the bride's church. It's probably the church she was baptized in. So men, therefore, are changing the church they attend after marriage. Sometimes churches closed, or they were destroyed, or they just decided to go to a different church. New church was built, and they went, wow, look at that. That cathedral's fantastic. We're going there. And sometimes it was out of necessity. Mixed denomination marriages often had to find a different church to attend than from the family. So reasons why you aren't going to find all the records on one film. So here's the punchline. Here's what's important. I know you're nodding your head, and 80% of everything I just told you is important and already known. But here, listen close here. There's a lot of different approaches. You can scan every film, every book, and collect it all and sort it out later. But I find that it helps to focus on one family group at a time. A man, his wife, and their issue. Because it's more likely that all those records are on one film or in one book, and it's more likely that they're all at the same church. Think about that for a minute. You know, one family over a short period of time, man, wife, children, more likely to be in at that same church within 50 years, etc. So it will keep you from jumping around so much. The specific availability of records changes over time, and so you won't have to deal with that if you're doing one family group at a time. It's prudent to go from the known to the unknown. You know, people get mad at me in the family history library when I tell them this, because they said, well, the films go forward in time and you're telling me to go backward. I'm like, yeah, I am. I'm telling you to start with the children and come backwards to the parents and grandparents. So I know you're going to be looking at films backwards, but it really is important to make sure you're following the right family line. Okay, so all those different records. If they have family registers, in other words, pages upon pages of who married who and who their children were and who their grandchildren are and who died when, some churches actually assemble these family registers. They're fantastic. They're doing the work for you. Check those first. And then I suggest this: the burial records for the paternal and maternal surnames, looking for anyone in the family. Go through the burial records and look for folks with those surnames. Then look at the marriage records for the children, especially the girls. The girls are going to be, the women are going to be likely married in the parents' church. Followed by the baptism records for the children. So here we are, we're going back in time, right? Burial records for anybody in the family, the marriage of the children, the birth of the children, and the christening. Marriage records for the parents, and then the birth record for the parents as a child with their parents, right? So that order will ensure that you're not following the wrong John Clark. Once you've done that, repeat. You know, what I call, people who know me have heard me say this 100 times, peel the onion. You got that outside layer done, now go and repeat all this. You know, start with the church members, burial, marriage, baptism, marriage of the parents, birth record for the parents, and take a family group at a time, backwards in time. This approach will get you everything you want. You see things go by while you're scanning for other things, certainly make notes. Grab those copies. This should be your focus. This should be your approach. Burials are a bit of an exception in that prior to the 20th century, embalming wasn't a common practice. And what you'll find is that people were buried very close to where they passed. I have two great-great-grandfathers who were buried in Catholic cemeteries, and they were Lutheran, but the cemetery was across the street. So burials will be tougher to find, except nowadays, I think they're easier to find with at least the ones with headstones when you consider that billion graves and find a grave is out there. So, but keep in mind that you may be surprised what sort of facility they're buried in. Now, the rest of this is pure reference material that I'm going to leave you with. I know we went through that quick, and I'm sorry that this isn't more interactive, but I'm more than willing to spend time on the phone or with you at the library at some point. So the materials here, the instructions I gave you are in here, and it took a lot for someone else to convince me to use church records, and I hope I gave you a little bit of hope and a few ideas on how to do that. These links are to reading and other references. This is by no means anything other than an introduction. So language aids like Latin, medical terms is kind of interesting. You know, you see a death notice for one of your ancestors, and they died from dropsy, and you're going, what was that, right? This list here, this Baker's World, actually has a list of archaic medical terms. Consumption was the one that always surprised me. Go look up consumption as a cause of death. Buffalo and Erie County, there's an incomplete gallery of churches and the church buildings. Some of them don't exist anymore, but it's a wonderful resource that somebody spent a lot of time on. And buffaloresearch.com, Cynthia Van Ness's website, helps you when you're in Buffalo. United States and Canada, we have Baptist Roots, Cindy's List, Quebec for the French, and then Barb Snow's wonderful website about using church records. And I don't remember what this one is. Just another fantastic read. A Guide to Presbyterian Records. Presbyterians aren't very open, even with the Mormons, with their records, but they are very open if you contact them directly and ask, can you help me find the records? My grandfather went to this church. So they're just not, they're not into sharing, but they will help you in your endeavors. Quaker, Baptist, Evangelical, there are just so many wonderful resources out there. For the United Kingdom, England, Scotland, and Wales, we have Irish, Welsh, and I think these links were in there before. Tools, Welsh language tools for genealogists. In Europe, we have German, Using German Church Records by Lise Sarr, she's fantastic. Research in Greece, 25 essential websites for the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And if anybody's curious, this last page, it merely tells you how to use the hyperlinks that I included in this presentation. If you're using the Adobe version, there's instructions here on how the links work. And if you're using a PowerPoint viewer for the PowerPoint slideshow, each one behaves a little bit differently. So any questions, just give me a holler, I'll help you through that.
Okay. So Ward, let's see, everyone can unmute and start their videos back up.
Video.
There we go.
Do I hit start video?
Yep.
Okay. Oh, it's disabled. Okay.
Well, Lord, thank you so very, very much for that awesome presentation. I love researching in church records. I'm sure that many of you guys have also had success stories. You know, that for my one line, that is the only place where I've seen their home village, you know, back in the old country to get back there. Let's see, Gail posted in our chat, she said, just a note, when I was first starting my research, I used church records on microfilm at the Family History Center, and the film also included the cemetery's map of the family plots.
Yeah.
And so that's a nice, you never know what you might find on the films, you know, so that's wonderful. Does anyone have a question for Ward?
Yes, I would, a question about Quakers. My family supposedly were, through the ancestors, they were Quakers in New York, originally Eastern New York and then Western New York. I'm not sure, is that like associated with Baptists or?
Yeah, I don't know a great deal about the relationship there, but I did provide some links. What I would suggest is going to the link that I provided on the family search site. Go in there and just say Quaker and all your questions will be answered. But personally, I haven't done a lot of research in that regard.
I haven't either, but I did just recently read this book, which is How to Find Your Family History in U.S. Church Records, a Genealogist's Guide by Sonny Morton and Harold Henderson. And what I gleaned from that is that they're two separate religions, that I didn't catch that they merged their records at all. But this was a wonderful read. Not to plug my friend's book, but you know, we all met Sunny a couple years ago when she came to speak to us, and it's a great, you know, start.
Yeah, thank you. With the Quaker link and my great grandmas and supposedly they were Deckers through the Dutch Reformed Church. Two of them. Thank you.
Yeah. Does anyone else have a question for Ward?
Got a comment.
Okay.
Sure.
Talking about, the church, and
Yep.
the church is closed. Where are the records? In some denominations, like Roman Catholic, Episcopalian, those churches are organized into what are called dioceses. The bishop is responsible for all these churches in a diocese. Like the
Right.
Roman Catholic diocese is the 8 counties of Western New York.
Yep.
Lots of times, if you know the church, just call the diocese. They'll tell you where the records are.
Agreed. Sometimes
And
you don't.
another
I don't
thing
think that
is,
should be your first. I don't think
No.
that should be your first call, but
I don't think it should be the first, but if you get stuck,
if you get stuck,
it's an option. Then there's this great big volume comes out once a year, or at least it did until recently, unless now now they put it online, I don't know. But this is the official Catholic directory. And you could probably go into, say in Lockport, you could go into the office at All Saints Church or call them and ask them, gee, my ancestors attended St. Swithin's in Alton, Illinois. It's closed. Can you tell me where the records are? And they can look in this book, and they can look up St. Alton's and there's St. Swithin's in Alton, Illinois, and it'll say where the records are.
agreed. The issue is getting their attention. I've been turned away more than once by the diocese to say we're too busy to help you. But they have the information.
I've had good luck. They've always cooperated with me, so I don't know what the nice people rate versus bad people rate is, but
There you go.
anyway.
Maybe it is. I think the solutions are many, and it really depends upon the denomination, the time frame you're looking for. Certainly, once the Family History Center opens again too, you go in there and get your first level advice from a librarian that says, if I were looking for that record, I'd look here. For Western New York, which I know that a lot of you probably have Western New York research, it's the Mormon Church, the Downtown Library, and the Historical Society. For Niagara County, I'm going to include an entire list of links where church records can be found online, which is very exciting. I do apologize for not having my act together here for that. I thought I could share more interactively while the Zoom was in play, but unfortunately, when I tried to switch, it would end the one Zoom. So I didn't get to show you as many things online, and so you're going to have to do some exploration. Make sure you go and download the documents that I'm providing to Jeanette, and you're going to distribute that link, and they'll be in a Google Drive. Right click on each file and just download it to your machine, and then open it up. And it took several years to collect and assemble all these links and reading materials, and these are the best that I found. And now we've got a new book. I have to add your friend's book to my list.
Yeah, it's Genealogical Publishing Company. So. Does anyone else have a question for the awesome Ward while we have him?
I have a story. I mean, I'm sure you can relate, but my family came here to build the railroads, the first railroads in America, and they wound up in Wheeling, West Virginia, which was the end of the first line. And so I've done a lot of research in West Virginia, which was just Virginia back then. But anyway, I found the burial place for my great-grandfather's siblings on the top of a hill, a wonderful view in the in the mountains. And I get up there, and the cemetery was destroyed by vandals. It was spray painted, and the roofs were knocked off of vaults, and headstones were kicked over and broken intentionally. And I was scheduled to meet with some of the genealogical leadership down there. And I guess I came on a little too strong, because they almost immediately turned around, organized the community, and for the last 10 years have been correcting that injustice and rebuilding this entire cemetery, putting the stones back together, writing very large stones and monuments. And so I've just found that, you shouldn't be shy about talking to the local folks who can point you to the right resources and records, and also just make a difference in their community. They're just saying, yeah, we didn't know what to do, but now that you've shamed us, we're going to, and it ended up being a very positive thing. So while you're out there, take a look around, talk to these folks. They know where the records are. But I'll tell you, 80% of the time, I've been able to find the church records for any time frame, for any person, for any country. It's not like I've done research in China, but you know what I'm talking about.
I've been having some fun this summer. I need to print out a bigger fan chart, but I've been coloring by religion, and I just started it. And like I said, this is I printed this off my Heritage, and I haven't built that up yet. But I just picked different highlighter colors, because I was really interested to see like Methodist, Baptist. I was like, and she was Baptist, and then after she married, she switched to Methodist, and I didn't realize, so I've been having some fun with that. But like I said, I need to print off a better one, and that with more bigger fan and fill it in. But just kind of
the Roots Magic supports color use too, which you'd have a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, I should look into that. It'd be easy, but I don't know. I bought new highlighters. You got to have some fun.
Oh, and now that you've made the investment.
I even bought like a second pack because I wanted the purple one. So
here's some fun. Can you see where I'm pointing?
Yeah.
This is my great-great-grandfather, who hangs in a prominent position in my dining room. A very famous murderer from Buffalo, New York. And so I just want to go on record that although historically, eventually he was a very prominent man and a great businessman and a good father of 13 children, he did have some bad characteristics, but he's still on the wall. I'm not going to tear him down. So.
Joanne asked in the chat window, she wants to know if you have a favorite template or format that you would recommend when you're transcribing your church records and information that you get from the church. She said she was lucky enough to go to a church and she took tons of records, tons of pictures of all the pages, but she wished she had taken and done a better job of notating the pages and the books she was in. So when you're out on a research trip, how do you do it? How do you keep yourself on track and organized?
Here's what I do for my clients. And I wish I'd have done it for myself, but half of it wasn't available when I started my own research. But when I'm doing it today, I will collect those images just like she talks about. I get a digital image of the page, and I make sure that the specific citation of the town, the church, the record book, the page are recorded. And I want to make sure that I can actually read it before I leave, right? You don't want to leave and then go, oh, I can't read this, right? Make sure you can read it. And then I do, I go straight to genealogy database. Inside the person's record, I'll record a baptism or a marriage or a burial. And the software that I use, Roots Magic, has a template for all of those citation type items, right? So in there, it'll have, for instance, a baptism, and you'll be able to record the repository you found it in, the book it was in, the volume, the page, and the citation details. That's all part of the software I use. And then when we print the reports out, there's options to print the detail or the summary citations. So I go right from digital image to to genealogy software citations.
Now, just to, in our hypothetical, what if you're at a repository that doesn't let you have, you know, digital, like your phone? I've been in courthouses, they've taken everything off of me, you know, like I've just allowed paper and pencil.
Yeah, you know, the concern 20 years ago was the flash, and I'm with them all the way. You don't want to flash on historical documents. But I've seen half the time now, they realize that taking a picture doesn't hurt anything. The other half of the time, they realize that you're stealing their $2 copy charge, right? And you just have to pay the fee to get the copy or sneak the picture, but you wouldn't want to do that. A lot of places are going to want you to pay the fee, which is how they open the doors, right? So in those cases, your other option, rather than to pay the fee, I could look around and see if I can find church record, a standard church record template that might be useful. I can do that and send it to you. You can distribute it.
Yeah, and there might be some on Cindy's list. She has a lot of templates there, so.
Yep, Cindy's list is in the list of links I sent around too. So, but I will look for that. That's an interesting request.
Wonderful. Any last questions from anyone?
I just want to make a comment to Kathy. I will be going up to Newport, Rhode Island for August, assuming that still allowed to go there. And I do have a number of relatives that were in the New Bedford area, Fall River area. So I mean, if you never needed something research, and if I got over that way, I mean, I could maybe look that up for you.
Oh, thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much to everyone. Thank you to Ward for sharing all of your knowledge.
Thank you.
It's nice to feel normal again.
So I'll have this video, you know, I've recorded it. I'll upload it to our Niagara County Genealogical Society's YouTube channel, probably by tomorrow, and send the link in that email that I keep messaging. You're going to get quite a long email from me tomorrow with everything that I'm bringing up, and with Ward stuff too. So, but thank you everyone. Stay safe. This is our last program meeting until September. Like I said, we're still going to have our book discussion next week on Monday, and you know, our program planning for 2021. But our next session in September is a DNA one with Nancy Koster, and then in October there's Al. Hi, Al. Al's going to talk to us on civil records. So that'll be our
Civil War records.
Yes. I'm sorry, what did I say? Civil records?
Yeah.
Civil records.
Civil War records. They're totally different. Isn't that funny? One little word, and it's a whole different program. Sorry. Civil War records.
I want to be at that. I got a story to tell you when you do that one.
Okay.
Well, thank you, everyone.
Oh, not for now. It's a long one. A long story.
Oh well, stick around. And I got to stand in on the 150th anniversary of the Civil War. The start of the Civil War, Wheeling, West Virginia asked me to come down and stand in for my great-grandfather, who was in the West Virginia Cavalry. And what they do is they do a cemetery tour. Have you ever seen these? Where you stand in period garb at the gravesite and tell your life story.
Yeah, I've been on a couple of those. Not Civil War, but I've been on them.
This was Civil War, and I got to tell about 21 members of my family that fought in the Civil War. It was a great honor to tell their story.
Yeah, I've gone to
Do you, at the Family History Center, do you have Civil War records of people?
We have the indexes to the Civil War pension files. I think we have several books in the modest library that they have. And we have local books for Niagara and Erie County that talk about people who served in various wars.
That's
probably
good.
seen the same ones at the downtown library.
It's good to know. I might be talking to you.
I do know that the National Archives has opened up a lot of their records. We could probably have a discussion about that too.
Okay.
There's a lot of great additional content now that's available, as long as you're willing to pay. All right, I'll look for you.
Yeah,
Okay.
speaking of content, real quick, with us opening up for appointment only, Ward did mention it, but we do have a lot of church records in our Niagara County Library. You know, if you're interested in our June newsletter that'll be coming out soon is all about church records. So you can read the awesome Shelley Richards put together for us. So
Well, then you're really going to look at that list that I distributed, and hopefully I did it justice.
yeah.
Yeah. I've narrowed my family back down to London, Ashton, Lynn in England. And of course, I'd like to go there in person, but who knows when that can be. But
I found a
online
brother
is
2
great.
years ago. I found a brother 2 years ago. He's a half brother, 85 years old.
Huh.
Too bad we couldn't find each other before that, but it was using DNA. And my Y line changed 7 generations back. I used Y-DNA to figure that out. So now I'm back 38 generations on the one line. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Backed up with DNA.
Yeah.
So
Amazing.
it's a great time to be doing this, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
a great
it is.
time to
Yeah.
be doing research. I started back in the early 80s, and it was all paper and postal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm gonna cut us off. We're almost at an hour and a half here. So.
Okay, download those
Thank
files,
you.
and if you can't, call me.
All right.
Thanks so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, everyone.
you,
Stay
Lord.
safe.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.